Los Angeles was miles away. The bright lights, the cameras, the never-ending movement of the entertainment world. None of that existed here. This was a small town, a forgotten place, a place where time moved. It was early morning. The air was crisp, still carrying the freshness of last night's rain. The streets were quiet, the kind of quiet that only exists before the world fully wakes up. A house. No, a ruin. At the very end of the road stood an old, crumbling house like a forgotten ghost. Its windows shattered, its walls cracked and peeling. The front door barely hanging on its hinges. It looked like no one had lived there in years, but it wasn't empty. Sitting on the front steps, wrapped in an old, torn blanket, was a woman. She wasn't begging. She wasn't calling for help. She was just sitting there, as if she had become part of the house itself. A meeting that wasn't supposed to happen. Most people had probably walked past her. Maybe they glanced. Maybe they whispered to themselves, "That poor woman," and kept going. But not Oprah. She walked closer, slowly, carefully. Margaret didn't react at first. Her hair was unkempt, streaked with silver, her face pale, worn. Not just the kind of tired you feel after a long day, but the kind of exhaustion that settles into your bones. Oprah crouched down, meeting her at eye level. "Hi there. My name is Oprah." For a moment, Margaret seemed startled. Then, in the softest whisper, she replied, "I know who you are." A pause. A long, heavy pause. Then Margaret spoke again. "But that doesn't change anything." Oprah tilted her head, studying her. "Are you living here?" Margaret nodded. "This house. It's mine." Oprah glanced up at the broken windows, the collapsing roof. It didn't look like much of a home. But in Margaret's eyes, it was all she had left. The story no one heard. Margaret hadn't always been here. She hadn't always been invisible. Once she was a teacher. She had a house, a family, a life. But life has a way of throwing unexpected storms in your path. Her husband got sick. The medical bills piled up. The debt came too fast to escape. And one day, the life she had built was gone. She lost everything. Her home, her security. She never wanted to be a burden, so she never asked for help. She just faded away. And one day she found herself here, the last place she could call home. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. "You probably think I should have asked for help," she said. Oprah didn't respond right away, because the truth was, Margaret wasn't wrong. But how many people felt the exact same way? How many people suffered in silence, believing their pain wasn't important enough to be noticed? Oprah reached out, gently placing her hand over Margaret's. "Well, I see you now." A decision that changed everything. Sometimes, a person's life changes in a moment, not with grand speeches, not with dramatic events, but with one decision. Oprah pulled out her phone. Margaret frowned. "What are you doing?" Oprah smiled. "I'm getting you out of here." Margaret shook her head. "It's not that simple." But Oprah had already dialed. "Hi, I need a team at my location, and a doctor, right away." "No, I don't care what time it is. Just send them." Margaret's hands trembled. "I don't understand. Why are you doing this?" Oprah looked at her, eyes steady, unwavering. "Because someone should have done it a long time ago." The first step toward a new life help arrived faster than Margaret could process. Doctors, social workers, volunteers, people who had dedicated their lives to helping those who had been forgotten. Margaret tried to protest, but the truth was, she was tired. Tired of the cold. Tired of pretending she wasn't lonely. Tired of believing this was all she had left. She let them help her. And for the first time in years, she felt something she thought was gone. Hope. A life rebuilt. Piece by piece, weeks passed. Margaret had a new home. Small, modest, not extravagant. But it was hers. She was getting the medical care she needed. She had clean clothes, warm meals, and something she hadn't had in a long time. A second chance. And then, one day, there was a knock at the door. Margaret opened it, and standing there was Oprah. Margaret smiled, a real smile. "I wasn't sure you'd come back," she said. Oprah laughed. "I told you we were just getting started." Margaret stepped aside, inviting her in. The house was warm, cozy. Books on the shelves, a small radio playing soft music in the background. Margaret had a life again. "You know what I've learned," Margaret said. "What's that?" Oprah asked. Margaret took a deep breath. "Sometimes, all it takes for a person to find their way back is for someone to notice they're lost." Final reflection. Right now, out there are people like Margaret. Not because they aren't worthy, not because they don't matter, but because no one has noticed them yet. So maybe today, you could be the person who notices. What do you think? What would you have done in Oprah's place? Would you have stopped? Would you have made the call? Tell us in the comments. If this story inspired you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes, a small act of kindness can change a life. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful real-life stories.